People spend years believing they're getting closer. One more achievement, one more opportunity, one more chapter of life that finally makes everything feel complete. Yet the moment they reach what they thought would bring lasting happiness, the feeling begins to fade, and the search quietly begins again. Happiness always seems to stay just beyond the horizon, close enough to keep pursuing, but never close enough to hold on to. The Stoics recognized this pattern thousands of years ago. They understood that the greatest obstacle to happiness was never the world itself. It was the belief that happiness could only exist somewhere outside of you. Stoicism offers a different way of seeing life. It does not ask you to give up on joy or ambition. It asks you to stop placing them at the mercy of circumstances you cannot control. A peaceful life is not built by arranging the world exactly as you want it. It is built by mastering the one thing that has always been within your reach, your own mind. When your perspective changes, the world begins to change with it. The happiness that once seemed distant no longer feels like something waiting in the future. It becomes something you begin practicing in the present. That shift does not happen through one extraordinary breakthrough. It begins with small moments of awareness that quietly reshape the way you think, the choices you make, and the person you become. The Stoics believed that lasting peace is never handed to us by chance. It is cultivated through understanding, strengthened through discipline, and protected by character. Once that truth becomes clear, the search for happiness no longer leads farther away. It leads inward to the one place it could never be taken from you. The first truth is quieter than most people expect. Happiness begins to disappear the moment you make it conditional. The moment your peace depends on a particular outcome, you place your emotional stability into hands that were never yours to control. A promotion, a relationship, better health, more money, greater recognition, someone else's approval. They slowly become the gatekeepers of your inner life. That arrangement feels completely normal because most of us are taught from an early age that fulfillment waits somewhere ahead. The promise sounds convincing, but it quietly teaches the mind to postpone peace until reality agrees to its demands. The Stoics noticed something remarkably simple. Events themselves rarely create lasting suffering. More often, suffering grows from the expectations attached to those events. The mind writes invisible contracts with the future, then becomes shocked when the future never signed them. That disappointment feels deeply personal, even though reality never promised to follow our private plans. This is why two people can experience the same setback and walk away with completely different lives. One sees only loss. The other sees change, accepts it, and begins again. The circumstance remained the same. The interpretation did not. Listen for the quiet sentence that keeps returning. I'll be happy when. It appears so naturally that you barely notice it. You tell yourself one completed goal will finally allow you to relax. But once that goal arrives, another quietly takes its place. The finish line keeps moving because the habit of postponing contentment has become stronger than the achievement itself. Without realizing it, you begin living beside your own life instead of inside it. Every ordinary day becomes preparation for a better one that never fully arrives. It is an exhausting way to live because it asks you to trade the only moment you truly possess for a future that never stops changing. Epictetus expressed this idea with remarkable clarity. Don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. Stoicism offers a different perspective. It does not ask you to lower your ambitions or stop pursuing meaningful goals. Goals matter because they give direction, discipline, and purpose. The problem begins when they become conditions for self-respect. You can work with complete commitment while understanding that the outcome will never belong entirely to you. Other people make decisions. Circumstances change. Time interrupts even the best plans. None of those realities erase the value of honest effort, In fact, that is when your character becomes visible. There is also a psychological reason this pattern feels so familiar. Modern psychology calls it hedonic adaptation. The Stoics recognized the same pattern long before psychology gave it a name. The human mind quickly adapts to improvement. What once felt extraordinary soon becomes ordinary. The new home becomes simply the place where you live. The better salary becomes the amount you expect. Recognition that once felt unforgettable quietly fades into memory, replaced by another desire waiting just ahead. External rewards lose their emotional intensity far faster than inner habits do. If your peace depends only on the next reward, your peace will always need another reward. This does not mean refusing success or pretending enjoyment has no value. It means learning to appreciate without becoming dependent. There is an important difference between appreciating something and believing you cannot remain steady without it. Appreciation creates gratitude. Dependence creates fear. Once fear enters the picture, the possibility of loss begins controlling your decisions. You hesitate to speak honestly because honesty might cost approval. You avoid necessary conversations because conflict threatens comfort. Little by little, your freedom begins to shrink, not because life changed, but because your attachment quietly expanded. Look closely at the moments that disappointed you most. Often the deepest pain came not from reality itself, but from the distance between expectation and reality. The meeting did not go as planned. Someone misunderstood your intentions. A door remained closed after weeks of preparation. Those experiences certainly hurt, but the suffering became heavier when the mind insisted life should have unfolded differently. Acceptance is not the same as liking what happened. It is the willingness to stop arguing with facts after they have already arrived. That single shift frees an enormous amount of emotional energy that can finally be invested in the only part of life you can still shape. If these ideas resonate with the person you're trying to become, consider subscribing. Every conversation here is an invitation to slow down, think more deeply, and return to the timeless wisdom of Stoicism. Sometimes a single insight, practiced consistently, is enough to change the direction of an entire life. Once you stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world, something unexpected begins to happen. You notice that peace feels lighter. Decisions become clearer because they are no longer weighed down by constant fear of failure. You still prepare carefully. You still hope for good outcomes. Yet your identity no longer rises and falls with every result. Instead of asking whether life is giving you enough, you begin asking whether you are responding with wisdom, patience, and integrity. Those questions lead inward, and inward is the one place circumstances cannot permanently block. Real freedom begins the moment you recognize that your emotional life cannot safely be stored inside tomorrow. Tomorrow has never been guaranteed, and neither has perfect cooperation from the world around you. The present, however, offers something surprisingly reliable. It offers the chance to choose your attitude before choosing your next action. That choice seems small, almost invisible, yet repeated often enough, it reshapes the entire direction of a life. Happiness grows there, inside repeated moments of steady judgment rather than dramatic victories. When you practice meeting each day without demanding impossible guarantees, you discover that peace was never hiding in distant circumstances. It was waiting behind the expectations that finally loosened their grip. From that foundation, ambition becomes because it no longer carries the impossible burden of delivering your worth. You pursue excellence with commitment instead of desperation, and every step forward becomes meaningful regardless of where the road leads. Perhaps happiness begins much closer than most people ever think to look. It does not begin in the next opportunity or in the next version of your life. It begins in the quiet conversation taking place inside your own mind every single day. Long before your actions shape your future, your thoughts begin shaping your experience of the present. Every situation that enters your life is almost instantly given a meaning. A delayed response becomes rejection. A mistake becomes proof that you are not capable. A difficult season becomes evidence that life is unfair. These conclusions often arrive so quickly that they feel like reality itself, when in truth they are interpretations layered over reality. The Stoics understood this with remarkable clarity. They knew the mind was not simply a witness to life. It was an active participant, constantly coloring every experience before reason had the chance to examine it. Most people assume thoughts simply happen to them. They believe whatever appears in the mind must be accepted as true because it feels convincing in the moment. Yet the mind is not an objective narrator. It remembers selectively, predicts imperfectly, exaggerates danger, and often confuses possibility with certainty. One uncomfortable conversation becomes the beginning of imagined rejection. One criticism becomes the center of attention, while 10 compliments quietly disappear into the background. The brain developed this tendency for survival, always scanning for threats before noticing moments of peace. That instinct may have protected our ancestors, but it frequently distorts modern life by convincing us that every uncertainty deserves immediate concern. The Stoics refused to let every thought become a command. Instead, they treated the mind almost like a visitor whose opinions deserved attention, but not automatic agreement. That small distinction changes everything. A thought arrives saying that failure is inevitable. Instead of believing it immediately, they examined it. Another thought insists that someone secretly dislikes you because of one brief interaction. Again, they paused before accepting the conclusion. As Epictetus reminded his students, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. This practice was never about denying emotion or pretending difficult feelings did not exist. It was about creating enough space between the thought and the response for wisdom to enter the conversation. Within that space lives one of the greatest forms of freedom a person can experience. This freedom does not appear all at once. It develops gradually through repeated observation. The more carefully you watch your own thinking, the more familiar its patterns become. You begin noticing how often your assumptions rush ahead of the facts. You recognize how easily fear disguises itself as certainty. You see how quickly comparison steals satisfaction from experiences that were perfectly meaningful only moments before. Instead of feeling controlled by every passing emotion, you become curious about it. Curiosity softens reaction. Reflection weakens impulse. Slowly, the mind becomes less like a storm, pulling you in every direction, and more like a landscape you are learning to understand. There is another reason this awareness matters. Thoughts repeated often enough eventually become beliefs, and beliefs quietly shape identity. Someone who repeatedly tells themselves they are unlucky begins interpreting every inconvenience as confirmation. Someone convinced they are incapable notices every mistake while overlooking every success. These stories become invisible because they have been repeated for so long that they no longer sound like opinions. They sound like facts. Yet the Stoics believed character was never imprisoned by yesterday's thinking. Every day offered another opportunity to challenge old assumptions and replace them with judgments grounded in reason instead of habit. That process requires patience because deeply rooted beliefs rarely disappear after a single insight. Still, changing the way you think is only part of the journey. Even the clearest perspective struggles to survive when daily life constantly scatters your attention. A peaceful mind cannot flourish if every quiet moment is interrupted by distraction, endless stimulation, or habits that encourage constant reaction instead of reflection. The inner conversation becomes stronger when it is given room to breathe, and weaker when it is buried beneath noise. That realization leads naturally to another question, not about what you believe, but about where your attention spends its days. because whatever repeatedly captures your attention will eventually shape the person you become, often without you even noticing it. The mind was never designed to move endlessly from one distraction to another. It needs periods of stillness in order to organize experience, understand emotion, and develop clarity. Without those moments, thoughts remain unfinished, feelings remain unexplored, and decisions become increasingly reactive. Instead of directing your own life, you begin responding automatically to whatever captures your attention next. This creates an illusion of activity while quietly reducing your sense of presence. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." You may accomplish many things throughout the day, yet still arrive at the evening with the unsettling feeling that you were absent from most of it. The body moved through each responsibility, but the mind remained somewhere else, chasing the next piece of information, the next notification, or the next brief escape from silence. The Stoics placed extraordinary importance on protecting attention because they understood that whatever repeatedly occupies the mind gradually shapes character. Every thought leaves a trace. Every repeated focus strengthens a particular habit of perception. If your attention constantly rests on comparison, dissatisfaction slowly becomes your normal state. If it continually searches for conflict, the world begins appearing more hostile than it truly is. If it is trained to seek immediate stimulation, ordinary moments start feeling empty, even when they contain quiet beauty. This process happens so slowly that it often escapes awareness. Character is rarely transformed through one dramatic event. More often, it is formed by thousands of small moments that seem too insignificant to matter at the time. This is why presence is far more than a relaxation technique or a temporary exercise in mindfulness. Presence is the decision to fully participate in the only moment where life actually unfolds. The past survives only as memory. The future exists only as possibility. Everything meaningful happens here, inside the present experience that the mind so often overlooks. Yet many people spend astonishing amounts of time mentally living somewhere else. They replay conversations that cannot be changed. They rehearse problems that may never appear. They compare today's reality with an imagined future where everything finally feels complete. Meanwhile, the present quietly continues passing by, asking for nothing more than simple attention. There is an unexpected reward hidden inside this practice. As attention becomes steadier, ordinary experiences begin recovering a richness that constant distraction had quietly erased. A familiar conversation becomes more meaningful because you are actually listening instead of preparing your next response. A meal becomes more satisfying because it is no longer interrupted by endless scrolling. A simple walk reveals sounds, colors, and details that had always been present but rarely noticed. Life itself has not changed. Your relationship with it has. The ordinary starts feeling less ordinary because you are finally experiencing it instead of rushing past it towards something else. This shift also changes the way difficult moments are experienced. Challenges do not suddenly disappear, nor do disappointments lose all their weight. The difference is that they stop multiplying inside an uncontrolled mind. Presence interrupts the habit of adding imagined futures onto present difficulties. Instead of carrying tomorrow's worries alongside today's responsibilities, you deal honestly with what stands before you now. That simple adjustment conserves emotional energy that would otherwise be wasted on problems existing only in imagination. The Stoics believed that peace was not found by controlling every circumstance, but by learning to meet each circumstance without surrendering the stability of the mind. As this becomes a daily practice, something subtle begins unfolding. The restless urge to constantly seek fulfillment elsewhere gradually weakens. The need for endless stimulation loses some of its power. Quiet moments no longer feel empty because they are no longer competing with constant distraction. They become opportunities to reconnect with your own thinking, your own values, and the life unfolding around you. Attention slowly returns home, and with it comes a deeper appreciation for experiences that had always been available. It turns out, happiness was never hiding behind greater excitement. It was quietly waiting beneath the noise, patiently revealing itself the moment you became fully present enough to notice it. You begin noticing something that once seemed too ordinary to deserve your attention. The moments you overlooked while chasing larger ambitions quietly begin revealing their true value. A calm morning before the world grows loud, the familiar rhythm of preparing a simple meal, a conversation where no one is trying to impress anyone, the warmth of sunlight through a window, the comfort of returning home after a demanding day. None of these experiences announce themselves as extraordinary, yet together they form much of what makes a life feel meaningful. The strange part is that they were always there. They only seemed insignificant because the mind had become convinced that happiness would arrive through something bigger, newer, or more impressive. As Seneca wisely observed, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." The Stoics believed this was one of the greatest illusions people carried throughout life. We become so focused on reaching the horizon that we stop noticing the solid ground already supporting every step we take. The Stoics often reflected on impermanence because they understood that appreciation becomes more honest when you stop assuming everything will always remain available. The people who matter most, the health that allows you to move freely, the ordinary routines that feel repetitive today, even the home you hardly notice anymore. None of these things are guaranteed forever. This realization is not meant to create fear. It is meant to awaken awareness. When you remember that life is constantly changing, familiar experiences regain a quiet beauty that routine had almost erased. The ordinary meal shared with family becomes something worth remembering. A peaceful evening loses its invisibility. Even silence begins offering something valuable because it reminds you that peace often arrives without announcing itself. Modern life encourages the opposite habit. It constantly points attention toward what is missing rather than what is present. Advertising, comparison, and endless achievement quietly suggest that satisfaction always exists somewhere beyond today's reality. There is always another purchase, another accomplishment, another milestone waiting to complete the picture. Yet the picture never feels complete because the standard keeps moving. The moment one desire is fulfilled, another quickly appears to replace it. This cycle has very little to do with the external world and almost everything to do with the habits of the mind. Without realizing it, people become experts at overlooking the blessings they once desperately hoped to receive. Gratitude interrupts this cycle in a surprisingly practical way. It teaches the mind to notice before it judges, to observe before it compares. Instead of beginning each day with a list of unfinished goals, attention gradually expands to include what is already working. There is breath in your lungs. There are lessons hidden inside your mistakes. There are relationships that continue to shape your life in quiet ways. There are ordinary moments offering rest between responsibilities. The Stoics believed this practice also strengthened resilience. Someone who regularly notices what remains good during difficult seasons is less likely to become consumed by temporary setbacks. Gratitude creates balance, not by minimizing suffering, but by refusing to let suffering become the entire story. Even during periods of uncertainty, there are still values that can be practiced, relationships that can be appreciated, and opportunities to grow in wisdom. This balanced perspective allows hope to exist without becoming dependent on perfect circumstances. It teaches quiet confidence rather than blind optimism. As appreciation deepens, another realization naturally follows. The richest moments in life are rarely experienced alone. A kind conversation feels more meaningful because another person shared it. A peaceful meal becomes warmer in good company. Encouragement given during someone's difficult season often leaves a lasting impression on both people involved. Gratitude naturally reaches outward because genuine appreciation has a way of expressing itself through generosity, patience, and kindness. The more clearly you recognize the gifts quietly woven into your own life, the more naturally you begin noticing opportunities to become part of someone else's. In that moment, happiness stops feeling like something to collect for yourself and starts becoming something that quietly grows every time it is shared. No one builds a meaningful life entirely alone, even though modern culture often celebrates the image of complete independence. Strength is frequently mistaken for isolation, as if needing no one has become the highest form of success. Yet human nature has always suggested something different. Every conversation leaves an impression. Every friendship influences the direction of thought. Every environment quietly teaches habits that eventually begin feeling natural. Whether you realize it or not, the people closest to you are constantly shaping the way you interpret the world, the standards you accept, and the person you are slowly becoming. The Stoics understood this long before psychology gave it scientific language. They believed character develops through repeated contact with others because human beings naturally absorb the attitudes, behaviors, and values they encounter most often. This is why choosing relationships carefully was never considered a luxury. It was viewed as an essential part of living wisely. Think about how easily emotions spread between people. Spend enough time around someone who constantly complains, and negativity begins sounding reasonable. Stay close to someone who responds to every challenge with calmness and perspective, and your own reactions slowly begin changing as well. This influence rarely happens through dramatic advice or life-changing conversations. More often, it appears in small moments repeated over months and years. The habits of those around you quietly become familiar until they begin feeling like your own. That is why the Stoics encouraged surrounding yourself with people whose actions reflected the qualities you hope to strengthen within yourself. They knew that discipline grows more naturally in the presence of disciplined people, just as patience becomes easier to practice when you regularly experience it from others. This influence moves in both directions. While other people shape your character, you are also shaping theirs every day. The way you respond during stressful moments teaches others how conflict can be handled. The way you listen communicates whether people feel respected or ignored. Even your smallest gestures contribute to the emotional atmosphere around you. A thoughtful word offered at the right moment can remain with someone far longer than you ever realize. The Stoics believed that living well was never only about improving yourself. It also meant becoming someone whose presence made the lives of others a little steadier, a little calmer, and a little more hopeful. Personal growth and service were never separate pursuits. They strengthened one another. Forgiveness belongs in this same quiet category. It is often misunderstood as excusing harmful behavior or pretending painful experiences never happened. In reality, forgiveness begins as an internal decision to stop allowing another person's actions to dictate the quality of your own inner life. Holding resentment may feel justified, but resentment asks you to relive the same injury long after the event has ended. The person who caused the pain may have moved forward, while your mind continues replaying the memory again and again. The Stoics recognized that carrying unnecessary bitterness eventually becomes another form of self-inflicted suffering. Choosing peace does not erase justice, nor does it require forgetting the past. It simply refuses to let the past remain in control of the present. Meaningful relationships also depend upon honesty, and honesty requires courage. It is easier to hide behind pleasing everyone than to speak with sincerity while remaining respectful. Yet relationships built upon appearances eventually become exhausting because they demand constant performance. Authentic connection begins when people feel safe enough to reveal who they truly are, instead of who they believe they must become. This kind of trust cannot be forced. It grows gradually through consistency, reliability, and mutual respect. Every promise kept strengthens it. Every moment of genuine attention deepens it. Over time, these seemingly ordinary interactions create bonds capable of supporting both people through life's inevitable difficulties. Modern life often makes these connections more difficult to maintain. Schedules become crowded, messages replace conversations, shared experiences are postponed until someday, and someday quietly becomes months or years. Relationships rarely disappear because of one dramatic event. More often they fade through simple neglect. As Aristotle observed, wishing to be friends is quick work, but friendship is a slow ripening fruit. The Stoics would have viewed this as a failure of intention rather than affection. Caring about someone is important, but care becomes meaningful only when it is expressed through action. A conversation, a visit, a thoughtful message, or simply being fully present during time together carries far greater weight than grand declarations offered once in a while. As these relationships deepen, they provide something achievement alone never can. Success may bring satisfaction, but meaningful connection gives that success a place to belong. Difficult seasons become more bearable because burdens are shared instead of carried in silence. Joy becomes richer because someone else celebrates alongside you. Even ordinary days feel more complete when experienced with people whose presence reminds you of what truly matters. The Stoics believed that human beings were created to cooperate, not merely to compete. Living according to that truth creates a quiet sense of harmony that cannot be purchased or earned through status alone. Yet even the strongest friendships, the most supportive family, and the deepest relationships cannot completely free someone whose mind remains chained to yesterday. Others may encourage you, forgive you, and stand beside you, but no one can release the grip of regret, resentment, or guilt except you. Eventually, every journey toward lasting peace arrives at the same difficult realization. The greatest obstacle is often no longer outside your life. It is the part of the past that still lives within your thoughts, waiting for the moment you finally choose to let it go. One of the greatest burdens a person carries is rarely the mistake itself. It is the endless resistance that follows it. The mind returns to the same conversation, the same decision, the same missed opportunity, believing that one more replay might somehow produce a different ending. Days pass, sometimes years, yet the argument with the past continues, as though reality might eventually change its mind. This quiet habit consumes more energy than most people realize because it demands constant attention while offering nothing in return. The event is over, but the struggle continues inside the imagination. The Stoics recognized this pattern with remarkable honesty. They understood that suffering often survives long after pain has ended because the mind refuses to release what time has already carried away. The past no longer exists anywhere except in memory, yet memory can become powerful enough to overshadow the life unfolding right in front of you. Mistakes naturally leave an emotional mark. That is part of being human. Regret reminds you that your choices matter. Disappointment reveals that your values are real. The problem begins when regret stops being a teacher and becomes a permanent place to live. Instead of learning from yesterday, the mind begins serving yesterday. Every new opportunity is filtered through old failures. Every decision becomes weighed down by experiences that can no longer be changed. Slowly, confidence weakens, not because ability disappeared, but because attention became trapped inside chapters that had already ended. The Stoics never suggested pretending mistakes did not matter. They believed mistakes should be examined carefully, understood honestly, and then left behind once their lesson had been learned. Wisdom grows through reflection, but endless repetition produces only exhaustion. There is an important difference between remembering and reliving. Remembering allows experience to become knowledge. Reliving forces experience to become identity. Someone who repeatedly tells themselves they are defined by a single failure eventually begins acting as though growth is impossible. Every setback becomes confirmation of an old belief rather than an opportunity to respond differently. This is why acceptance requires courage. It asks you to release the illusion that continued self-punishment somehow improves the past. It never does. It only damages the present. The Stoics viewed acceptance as one of the clearest expressions of strength because it demanded complete honesty about reality. What happened has happened. No amount of wishing, replaying, or resisting changes that fact. Energy spent arguing with reality is energy permanently unavailable for building something better. The same principle applies to resentment. Anger often feels justified when someone has caused genuine harm. The wound is real. The disappointment is real. The betrayal may have changed the direction of your life in ways that cannot be ignored. Yet resentment quietly creates another injury. It asks you to carry yesterday into every tomorrow. The person responsible may continue living without thinking about what happened, while your own thoughts remain tied to the moment that hurt you most. Without noticing, the past begins making decisions for the present. New relationships become more difficult because old distrust refuses to leave. New opportunities feel dangerous because previous disappointment continues whispering warnings. The Stoics understood that refusing to let go rarely protects you from future pain. More often, it prevents future peace. Acceptance does not require approving of what happened. It does not erase accountability or deny injustice. Instead, it acknowledges something both simple and difficult. Reality cannot be edited after it has occurred. Once that truth is fully accepted, something remarkable begins changing inside the mind. Attention slowly returns to the only place where influence still exists. The present becomes visible again. Decisions regain their importance because they are no longer competing with events that ended long ago. Instead of asking why the past unfolded as it did, you begin asking what kind of person you choose to become because of it. That single shift transforms suffering into wisdom. The event remains unchanged, but the meaning begins evolving. The Stoics often reminded themselves that every experience, pleasant or painful, could become useful if approached with the right judgment. Hardship developed patience. Failure revealed weaknesses that success often concealed. Loss reminded them to appreciate what remained instead of focusing only on what had disappeared. This perspective was never about forcing optimism onto difficult circumstances. It was about refusing to waste pain by allowing it to become nothing more than bitterness. Every challenge carried the possibility of strengthening character, provided the mind remained willing to learn instead of remaining trapped in resistance. Growth did not happen because life became easier. Growth happened because the response became wiser. Psychology reaches a similar conclusion. The stories people tell themselves about painful experiences often shape their future more than the experiences themselves. Two individuals may endure comparable hardships, yet one emerges with deeper resilience while the other remains imprisoned by the memory. The difference is rarely found in the event alone. It develops through interpretation, reflection, and the willingness to continue living instead of endlessly looking backward. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering without allowing memory to dictate every decision that follows. It is carrying the lesson without carrying the weight. As this understanding deepens, another quiet freedom begins appearing. You stop measuring your worth by your worst moments. You stop demanding perfection from a life that has always included uncertainty. You begin treating yourself with the same patience you would naturally offer someone else struggling to move forward. This does not weaken responsibility. It strengthens it because responsibility becomes focused on today's actions rather than yesterday's disappointments. Every sunrise quietly offers another opportunity to think differently, choose differently, and live differently. The future slowly opens because the past no longer occupies all the available space. Eventually, you discover that peace is not found by escaping your history, but by changing your relationship with it. The past becomes a source of wisdom rather than a permanent prison. Regret becomes instruction instead of identity. Pain becomes evidence that you have lived, learned, and continued despite everything that tried to convince you to stop. From that point forward, your attention naturally settles on what can still be shaped rather than what has already been written. And once that shift becomes part of your daily life, one final realization quietly emerges. Lasting happiness is not created by one extraordinary decision. It is built through the ordinary choices you continue making every single day. The happiest life is almost never built in the dramatic moments people remember. It is built quietly, almost invisibly, through choices that seem too ordinary to deserve much attention. There is no single morning when everything suddenly changes forever. No conversation that permanently removes uncertainty. No achievement that guarantees lasting peace. Instead, life is shaped one decision at a time. One patient response instead of an angry reaction. One honest conversation instead of another comfortable silence. One disciplined action instead of another excuse. These moments rarely feel significant while they are happening, yet they become the architecture of character. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that excellence was never an event, but a habit, repeated so consistently that it eventually became part of who you were. Happiness followed the same path. It was not discovered all at once. It was practiced until it became natural. This way of living requires a different understanding of progress. Modern culture often measures growth through visible milestones: a better career, a larger home, greater recognition, more influence. While none of these things are inherently wrong, they cannot reveal the condition of the person who possesses them. Someone may appear successful while carrying constant anxiety beneath the surface. Another person may live a remarkably simple life while experiencing a quiet steadiness that no external achievement could improve. The Stoics always directed attention toward what could not easily be measured, because they believed the unseen parts of a person ultimately determined the quality of everything else. Calm judgment, integrity, self-control, gratitude, and courage rarely attract immediate attention, yet they influence every decision that follows. They quietly determine whether success becomes fulfilling or empty, whether hardship becomes destructive or transformative. Every morning presents another opportunity to strengthen these qualities, not through grand resolutions, but through ordinary moments that arrive without warning. The first inconvenience of the day tests patience. An unexpected delay reveals whether frustration immediately takes control. A disagreement offers the chance to listen before reacting. A temptation invites discipline instead of impulse. None of these situations announce themselves as important, yet each one becomes another chance to shape the person you are becoming. This perspective also changes the way failure is understood. Instead of seeing setbacks as evidence that progress has disappeared, they become opportunities to practice what has already been learned. There will still be difficult mornings. There will still be moments when emotions speak louder than reason, when old habits briefly return, or when discouragement feels difficult to overcome. The Stoics never expected perfection because perfection was never the goal. Their aim was consistency. They knew that lasting change belongs to those who return to their principles again and again, especially after falling short of them. Every time you begin again, instead of giving up, you strengthen something within yourself that temporary success alone could never develop. Over time, these repeated choices begin producing a subtle transformation. The reactions that once required enormous effort gradually become more natural. Patience replaces urgency more often. Gratitude appears before comparison. Reflection interrupts impulse. What once felt like constant internal struggle slowly becomes quiet stability. This change rarely feels dramatic, because it develops gradually, almost beneath your awareness. One day you simply notice that a situation which would have unsettled you months ago no longer carries the same power. The Stoics believed this inner foundation was the only lasting form of security available to any human being. Wealth can disappear, health can change, relationships evolve, positions of influence eventually pass to someone else. Even the strongest plans remain vulnerable to events beyond your control. If your peace depends entirely upon these things remaining exactly as they are, peace will always remain fragile. But when stability is rooted in character, circumstances lose their ability to completely determine your state of mind. Challenges still hurt. Loss still matters. Grief still visits every life. Yet none of these experiences completely erase your ability to respond with dignity, wisdom, and self-respect. That quiet resilience becomes one of the greatest sources of lasting happiness. This understanding also removes the pressure to constantly search for extraordinary experiences. The next breakthrough no longer feels responsible for saving your life because your life is already being shaped by today's decisions. Waiting gives way to practicing. Hoping gives way to becoming. Instead of asking whether happiness has finally arrived, you begin noticing how often it quietly appears inside ordinary moments of thoughtful living. A peaceful conversation, meaningful work completed with care, a calm response during a difficult day. This is the heart of the Stoic way of seeing the world. Happiness is not hidden somewhere beyond today's responsibilities, waiting for perfect conditions before revealing itself. It grows inside the way you meet each responsibility. It develops through repeated acts of integrity that no one else may ever notice. It becomes stronger every time you choose principles over impulse, understanding over resentment, discipline over comfort, and gratitude over endless comparison. None of these decisions seem extraordinary in isolation. Together, they quietly shape an extraordinary life. Eventually, the search itself begins to change. You stop chasing happiness as though it exists somewhere outside yourself, waiting to be discovered through luck or circumstance. Instead, you recognize that it has always been built from the inside out, one ordinary choice at a time. The person you become matters more than the conditions you encounter, because circumstances will continue changing for the rest of your life. Seasons will come and go. Success will arrive and leave. Difficulties will appear without invitation. Through all of it, your character remains the one companion that travels with you every single day. Strengthen that, and every season becomes an opportunity to live with greater wisdom, deeper peace, and a happiness that no longer depends on the world becoming exactly the way you once believed it needed to be. If there's one lesson worth carrying forward, let it be this. Happiness was never waiting at the end of a perfect life. It has always been growing quietly through the choices you make, the thoughts you cultivate, and the character you build when no one else is watching. Keep practicing, keep learning, and trust that every small step taken with wisdom moves you toward a life of deeper peace. If this journey has spoken to you, don't let it end here. One of the videos on your screen right now will help you continue building the calm, resilient mindset that Stoicism has guided for centuries. Choose the one that resonates most and keep moving forward.